This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Frank Mitchell is a trauma nurse who had it out with COVID, and you can tell by the title of his book it was quite a battle. From the other side of the bed, a trauma nurse's personal and family's perspective during his fight for life while being infected with COVID. So you were in the hospital treating COVID patients, and then what happened?
I actually got infected with it, and I came down with a kind of a very unique, it actually almost made me terminal version of it. So I found myself fighting for my life in the intensive care unit for 21 days. COVID pretty much threw a whole bunch of clots through my system. It found some type of abnormality in a splenic artery, dissected it and ruptured it. I was bleeding massively internally. They called it a thrombocytopenia. The clots kind of go everywhere, and it was kind of a bad case. So the book is kind of more of not how sick was Frank. That's not my intention of the book. My intention of the book was it ravaged me. But as I was starting to come out and get better, I started to notice some things that really concerned me, generally in society and in the medical community. And I learned a lot being on that side of the bed rather than the person giving the cares. I noticed that my teams were just suffering. They're getting beat up emotionally with the isolation, not being able to have family members say goodbye to their loved ones in person, all the way up to being overwhelmed with the amount of sick people that were coming in and the unknown. And now I was part of the unknown. I didn't know if his caretakers were going to get sick because they were taking care of me because we didn't know so much about this. And it was more of a let's see what we can do to stop a couple things. I noticed that there was developing what I'm calling kind of like a self righteous indignation. I know more about vaccines than you do. I know more about masks than you do. Your opinion's wrong. You're wrong. It was ripping the community apart. It was ripping the medical community apart. It was ripping friends apart. And as I'm watching that develop from the bed, it's kind of breaking my heart. And I'm like, this can't happen because we don't need everybody's opinion. We need their support. And it kind of goes beyond the whole COVID portion of it. It's actually a lot of other illnesses too. But just that division continually ripping states, towns, countries, families, individuals apart. On the other half of that, my wife, she couldn't see me. She wasn't allowed to because of the isolative procedures. So the only communication she had with me was through an iPad. And the iPad, she could talk to me, and I'd wake up and I'd see her face there, and she'd say, "Hi, hon," and she'd stay on that iPad until it lost power. But one of the things she would do is she would sing to me over the iPad to try and calm my nerves. And one of the songs she sang to me was a song by Lauren Daigle called Rescue. And even to today, it's hard for me to even talk about the song without getting kind of choked up because the lyrics are so perfect for somebody being in a bed, especially in an isolated situation, and being just so sick without hope or without a vision of what's going to happen in the future. And part of that focus of that song is she says, I'm going to send in an army to find you in the darkness, and pretty much to relieve you from this, whatever's going on with you emotionally. And the army is something that I really focused on. This is how every individual, no matter how insignificant they think they are in this whole process, COVID or not, can actually become a member of the support army of the person inside that bed. I mean, everybody from security guards outside who brought in food that my wife would have to drop off for them, all the way up to like major doctors and surgeons and nurses and I mean even friends, family, people I didn't even know. I even mentioned my brother's tattoo artist became part of the army by starting some of the fundraising contributions that they did. And that is my hope with this book, is to help people realize that we're not insignificant in this whole process. Because man, the nursing staff, the doctors and everything could tell when somebody talked to me on the phone because my anxiety or discomfort was so much lessened and I needed so much less medication after just talking with people, after seeing people, having that connection. And I had people saying, I don't pray for people, but I'm praying for you. It was just amazing the amount of support that kind of snowballs behind the scenes. And that snowball is just, one more flake of snow just gathered together to gain momentum to help other people through this process. And that is my hope, my two hopes for that book. One of the things we can learn from this whole procedure is how to hopefully get back together and start functioning kind of as a community and a family rather than the we know better than you. Quite frankly, one of the things I've been kind of encouraging is that if anybody tells you they know how this disease, this pathogen, whatever you want to call it, works, they're lying. They don't know. We're still developing. I still have problems now. We're 2 years down.
I hear you, Frank. Thanks so much. If you never thought it was possible to have a truly amicable divorce that puts your children first, Vinnie Farinello has a book for you. He doesn't whine about being a single father. He doesn't trash his former wife. Sons and Cadillacs, An Unplanned Journey Through Single Fatherhood is a book to help people move forward.
Well, the story starts off on Father's Day. The first holiday I didn't have my children, which was odd due to scheduling. My kids at the time were 7 and 4.
And you must have had a million emotions going through your head.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, epiphany happens and I start writing. It's meant as a learning experience for others that are going through a similar situation. But we were very good at the tasks of life. We were very good at running the errands, scheduling the appointments, getting the administration done, all the things that you have to do to make sure your kids have the right tools to develop, whether it's school or setting up prepaid college funds, or all those things were done with great execution. But there was just no joy of being a couple. Everything was accomplished and task oriented, which is a sign that things are not going in the right direction, even though the on paper persona was very successful looking.
So when did that happen? Like, when did you go from, you fall in love with someone, you love them so much that you marry them. Where do you get lost? And all of a sudden, you're just executing tasks as opposed to really having a relationship.
Well, it goes back to the old saying that opposites attract, right? My former wife, and I don't like to use the term ex-wife, very successful person. I've done pretty well myself. But as far as personality goes, we were quite different. She was an introvert. I am an extrovert. I like being around people. She didn't. However, I think there are complementary things that initially people find attractive and find appealing. More so on my end, is I'm the type of person that likes to be around people with different perspectives and different points of view. But looking at it from a bigger perspective, over time, if you don't have a common connection, things will deteriorate. We couldn't watch a movie together. We couldn't agree on a TV show. The places that we visited, we were in different experiences. There was no common connection, and I think over time that causes a lot of stress. Even though our ambitions were very unified, our goals were very unified, but that's all professional aspirations. That's all life achievements. That's not necessarily the core of a improving relationship.
Right. So how'd you make out with your kids? Do you feel like, are you able to co-parent and say nice things about each other to your children?
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I try to, really describe as a positive thing in the book is, divorce doesn't have to be tumultuous. It doesn't have to be, angry. It doesn't have to be a war, especially when you have children. It's very productive, especially when my boys were younger, and we're going back a few years, that we would show up together at every parent-teacher conference. We would show up as a team. We would show up working together. The kids seen it. The teachers seen it. So it's really beneficial for the children. An old friend once told me that, when you get angry, you kill brain cells as if you were drinking. And, whether it's an ex or whether it goes back to, splitting up your marital assets, or is it really worth killing brain cells over, is the question you got to ask yourself. So we actually get along better now. because we were always a good team, right? Like we would have been great business partners. It's just that we had no connection as a couple, which was not as obvious in the beginning, but over time, those gaps widen greatly and it does cause issues. So, but our handoffs are very amicable and we sort of pre-plan, okay, do you want a Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? I mean, it's not always rosy. We have our arguments and stuff like that, but it is a normal partnership, like a business partnership. And the kids have progressed well. Both my boys are doing great. So it all worked out very well. And I think looking at this from a partnership perspective, because let's be honest, nobody wants to read about a guy bitching about his ex-wife, right? This is not what this is about. This is about, connecting with your kids and starting a new journey and some tools to help get through that. And, I'm a manager at work and, I always teach not through my successes, but also my mistakes or my setbacks and the learning experience that comes from that. And that comes out in this book. It's sharing, hey, for you, anybody that's a first time or going through this early, here's an approach I had. It was funny. It didn't work out. Here's the direction I might have went, in hindsight. And, there's nothing wrong with that.
There sure isn't. Thanks so much, Vinny. Sergeant Nobody is the pen name of our next author who has a burning desire to unite America and gives us some suggestions in his book, My Patriotic Nightmare. But I have to ask you, why Sergeant Nobody?
I'm a nobody and I'm trying to do something really stupid and impossible. So, I mean,
what, write a book?
Not just write a book, but the book is about, uniting America like never before. I feel like it's the only way forward for us. And I broke my leg last year, which is not a good way to start a story of inspiration, but I couldn't do anything on my feet for at least 6 months. I was watching a show called Sons of Liberty, and it's all about events leading up to the Declaration of Independence. And I think people lose focus on the fact that a handful of men from Boston, they were nobodies in the face of the world. And they had this idea and they were willing to risk their lives in order to achieve this goal. They had to convince the founding fathers that unity was the only way forward. And it took a lot of effort on their part, and luckily they did it. And I think it's amazing to look at how far we've come as a country over less than 250 years. But we also have so much negative at the same time. And unfortunately, we live in a society where people focus on more the negative than the positive. My book is about uniting people, not the government uniting people of America. I'm talking about it's our responsibility to unite ourselves. So shouldn't the government's focus be the betterment of its people? That was the vision. They wanted this place to be where you go to have a better life. And people still believe that. But now, based on the events of recent years, we're trying to put a big do not enter sign on the borders of America. But in order for us to unite, we have to talk about issues that nobody wants to talk about. We have to bluntly talk about racism. It's a choice, okay? Racism, you're choosing to have a closed mind, you're choosing to be ignorant. That's all it is, okay? Honestly, to me, as a white man in America, it's embarrassing that people are still judged by the color of their skin. We should be setting the shining example of progress to the rest of the world. These are our two options. Either we can unite like never before and build a future for our future generations that they can be proud of, that they can look forward to, or we can do what we're doing right now and just continue the violence, the nonsense, the hatred, and just watch the country rip itself apart on 24-hour news networks. You know what I'm saying? It's not just racism, because I just picked racism as an example because I honestly think that is the number one problem facing the future of America. But I also talk about things like climate change. I talk about economic oppression, conditional freedom. And I mean, I even talk about the legalization of cannabis on a federal level, based on scientific evidence, not how somebody thinks they feel about the topic. It's been proven over and over that cannabis is not only the safest, but probably the most effective drug in the world, yet it's still illegal on a federal level. But pharmaceutical companies are allowed to pump poisonous chemicals, unnatural chemicals into our bodies on a daily basis, and they can advertise it on television. Doesn't make sense to a lot of people. I know it doesn't make sense to anybody that enjoys using cannabis, because it's something we've been confused about for 20 years. There's also other things like the crazy laws that we have in place. Yeah, but like Nevada, okay? Nevada. It is illegal to own sex toys.
Where prostitution's legal, it's illegal to own a sex toy.
Yes.
How would they know you have one?
I have no idea, and I don't want to be the one to go kicking doors down looking for sex products. But like stuff like that exists that makes no sense. I mean, I want people to know that I'm just a single father trying to raise two teenagers and get through another day in America. You know what I mean? I want to show people that struggle can create strength.
All right, Sergeant, who can't relate to that? It's tough when your grandchildren live far away, so Chantel Bonatti uses hers for inspiration. Cruising in My Little Red Car is her first book in the adventures of Michael Bonatti series.
You know something, writing for me is a relaxation. And the way that the writing comes to me is getting an idea, and then I could write a story in 1 hour and it makes sense. Like I wrote a story about maybe 3 weeks ago when my son told me that he was taking my grandson out to football practice for the first time. And I sat down and I said, "Oh, isn't that nice?" I said, "Oh, I can't wait to see him." And they sent me pictures and they sent me little videos. And I sat down and I wrote a story about football.
So, did your grandchildren inspire Cruising in My Little Red Car?
Well, actually, my grandson inspired it. Micah, who's 9, I write the stories about him because I don't get a chance to see him every day. He's in California and I'm in Florida. I hear about everything he's doing, but I'm not there. I'm not physically there. So I said, if I just write to him, write about him, write these old stories, when he turns 18, that's when the stories will stop. And if anything should happen to me and he reads these little stories and he'll say, "Hey, my grandmother was always there. She was in my life, even though I didn't see her every day, but she was a great part of my life." And that's why I think I write these little stories. Cruising in my little red car was when his mom sent me a picture, and you could see the picture in the back of the book of him riding in that little red car. And I said, "Wow." I said, "What a cutie pie. How good he looks in that little red car." Well, the story is about him in the park. He's riding in his little red car with his mom. And then as he's riding, he's by the monkey bars and he meets up with Jerry Giraffe. Jerry Giraffe is like his alter ego, and he's semi autistic. So he never wants anyone to laugh when he's laughing. Go, "Stop laughing," and he stopped laughing at me. Jerry Giraffe follows him and then gives him the thumbs up as he's doing great things and following him around, and a comrade builds his ego up. And Jerry Giraffe is going to be in every single edition, every single story that I write about him. And that's the story where he's riding in the park. Everyone is riding too, and then they go home and take their nap. And then Jerry Giraffe says to him, "You should be at home yourself taking your nap."
All right. So he learns that he should listen to his mom when it's time to take a nap.
Exactly.
This is part of the Adventures of Micah Bonatti series.
Exactly. It's different editions and different series. But in the different series, you're always going to see Jerry Giraffe there. This is the plan. And I would like to set up a foundation after Micah Benetti because there's a lot of children that are illiterate and it's very difficult for them to get access to books, access to computers, especially in Haiti. I'm from Haiti. I was born in Haiti, but I came to the United States when I was 6 years old, grew up in New York, and I'm going to be doing a book signing towards the end of October. That's going to be the first book, Cruising in My Little Red Car. I have a company that's going to be putting together a website for me. We're going to be on all the social medias. The foundation is going up, and that's how the promotion is going to be.
So exciting, Chantel. Thank you so much. And now, the story of how a groundhog inspired a woman named Victoria to write Mr. Groundy.
Okay, in spring 2021, it must have been, a baby from that year. This groundhog came down. I got a rear stone wall and a rear stone walkway down to French glass door. Prancing, came right down to the door, sat on his butt, put both palms against the glass, And if you understand rodents that dig or burrow, their toenails are extremely long.
Yeah.
So he was tapping those toenails, sitting there with his bulbous nose stuck to my French glass door. And I thought, he's just looking at his reflection. You know, wouldn't you think that?
Yeah.
He's admiring himself, maybe, you know? So I walked over there as he's tapping. So I thought, I'm going to test this theory. I started walking long ways to the left. He'd follow me with his eyes. I'd walk long ways to the right. He'd follow me. I'd crouch down, stand up. He followed every movement. And from that moment on, I knew he knew what he was doing. I guess it was a he, so we'll just say a he. That's why I said Mr. Grundy, you know. But anyhow, yeah, he came.
He wasn't afraid.
No, and he came clockwork 7:30 every morning through that whole year of 2021.
You didn't feed him or anything?
No, he would come, tap it on the door. And every morning I'd go to the door and we'd do our little dance. That's what I called it. I'd be left, right, turn circles.
Oh my gosh, Victoria.
So therefore, I'm like, I always kind of wanted to write, you know, but with life in general, you know how we're all busy and everything, you know, past. But I'm 56 now. I was like, I don't know, maybe the universe said, start here with this special soul, you know. So that's what I did, a children's book that evolved around him with a learning lesson. She follows Mr. Groundy's actions through the summer. She goes out, sits out on the deck, follows him to see, you know, his daily life besides knocking on the door. And he makes friends with a hummingbird that is named Ollie that harasses Mr. Groundy every day. So there's fun and antics there. And then Ollie makes friends with a tree frog that is in a birdhouse too. And they all three become great friends. And it just shows how you must protect everyone, no matter their differences, and coexist. And then I have a sequel now that is taking the character of him and Miss Green, which Miss Green comes into the second book, which is going to be the ambassador to the earth from the universe. And it's going to go into preserving and protecting this beautiful earth.
Nice, Victoria. Thanks so much. And now a return author to the Page Publishing Book Club. Fallacy was the first book L.K. Croson wrote for Page, and she's created a pivotal character based on her Down syndrome son. The name of the character is Jake, and he kind of has a sixth sense in all of her stories and pretty much solves the mysteries. Now she's published her second book in the series. It's entitled Quarry.
I've always enjoyed suspenseful movies, suspenseful books, and things like that. And even when I was a little kid, I would make up stories. I didn't write them down. As I got older, I thought, why don't I put them down on paper? So a few years ago, I started seeing how my stories would turn out, and the people that read them liked them. So I decided to publish. And Quarry is the second one in a series.
And so this picks up where Fallacy left off.
Yes. And they go into a different direction. It keeps Jason Devereaux through, he retires in Quarry, but the characters are all the same. In the first book, Rachel and Jason meet. She is shot, and someone is trying to kill her throughout the book, and they're trying to figure out why, because she was just an average person. And in Quarry, Rachel and Jason develop a much more of a relationship, and then it brings in Jason's daughter, Caitlin, and she loses her husband while he's on deployment and moves home with her father. And she keeps having all these different things happening to her. She has an obsessive stalker. Also, her baby is kidnapped at one point. So this story develops Caitlin's character into the story also. And Jake, the Down syndrome young man, likes to be involved and helping in any way he can. He in both books has helped prevent some problems or helped guide them to find out what's going on. And then I go on to Ensnared. I haven't started publishing on that because I'm not quite finished with it, but the third one will be Ensnared. Each book, whatever is going on is solved. They find out who the stalker is, and they find out who the kidnapper is, and they're dealt with. So in the last story that they found out why someone was trying to kill Rachel. Jake helped protect his mother in the first one, and then helped them find what direction to find the kidnapper. He wants to help in any way he can, so he's very aware of things going on around him. I also would like people to realize that there's someone to pay attention to, and be involved with.
All right. Thanks, LK. And before you go, I want you to share what you told me about how this show helped you get the word out about your book, your first book.
I know that the last radio show one that I did on fallacy, I did get a few sales there.
From right here on the Page Publishing Book Club.
Yeah.
That's so good to hear.
Yes. When the comment was made and I realized it was from another state, the only way they would know is if they got, and it was back east, that they would have to have listened to the radio show.
Now that makes all of us feel good. So thank you for joining us on the Page Publishing Book Club. Go to pagepublishing.com to find out more about our authors and their books, and join us every week for more inspiration from our authors, many of them writing for the first time. And just like you, they never thought they could put a book together until they did. Don't forget to download the podcast at 710WOR.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.